Previously, we talked about converting nominal variables into real variables. That was one way to adjust for inflation or to take away the effect of inflation so that we can focus on the variable itself. That is just one of the way. Another way is to force the equivalence between two amounts of money. So if you have reason to believe that, two amounts of money in a different period of time cannot have the same purchasing powers because of inflation, then what you can do is to use the following formula. So what we are trying to do here is to force the equivalence between a certain amount of money in X year and a certain amount of money in Y year. Okay? So X year dollar divided by X year price level. Here we use CPI, but it doesn't have to be CPI. It can be, any price index. So we force the ratio to be equal to Y year dollar divided by Y year CPI. So you rearrange the term a little bit. Okay? So multiply both sides by X year CPI, then you get this. So if you have a certain amount of money in 2011, for example, you're wondering how much it is worth in 1950 after adjusting for inflation. This is what you can do. Okay? Use $2011 multiply by 1950 CPI and divide it by 2011 CPI. So then we will know how much it is worth in 1950. So let's look at a couple of examples. I'm sure some of you have heard of older generations, your grandparents, okay, or grand-aunts, grand-uncles. They talk about, life was probably easier back then in the sense that, things were much cheaper. So today, sometimes the older generation would say that, well, you guys have it hard because these days you work so hard and you still don't get to enjoy the same amount of goods and services that they used to because prices back then were much cheaper. Maybe, there is some truth in it. So we can find out. So here is an example. Let's say you have $7 in your pocket to purchase some goods and services in 2011. How much money would you have needed in 1950 to buy the same amount of goods and services? So what that means is we're trying to find how much $7 in 2011 is worth in 1950 dollars. So in order to solve this, we do need some information, some extra information. So here's what we are given, the price level. So we're given the CPI for 1950, 24.1. We're given the CPI for 2011, 183.3. So let's plug in the numbers. $2011 multiplied by 1950 CPI divided by 2011 CPI. So what we have here is 92 cents. What that means is if a person would want to buy the same amount of goods and services that could be bought with $7 in 2011 in 1950, then this person would have needed only 92 cents. To put it another way, a person in 1950 who had 92 cents had exactly the same purchasing power as a person who had $7 in 2011. Okay, so let's blow up the number a little bit so that we may see the connection better. So let's say you make $7,000 in 2011. You make $7,000 a month, okay? And your grandparent earned $920 a month in 1950. You would probably say that, well, look, look how much I make, how much more I make than you, $7,000 in 2011. And your grandparent earned only 920 in 1950. But when you look at this calculation, although you earned $7,000 in 2011, you have the same purchasing power as your grandparent who earned only $920 in 1950 because of inflation. So another example that we can look at is, well, let's say your parents told you that in 1950 a movie cost 25 cents. How could you tell if movies have increased in price faster or slower than most goods and services? To convert the price into 2011's dollar, let's use the CPI. So here is what we are given. We're given once again the CPI for 1950 and we're given the CPI for 2011. So essentially what we're trying to find is how much a movie ticket should cost in 2011 after adjusting for inflation. So a movie in 1950, it was given to us at 25 cents. Let's convert that into 2011 dollar. So 1950 multiplied by 2011 CPI and divided by 1950 CPI. So we get $1.91. What that means is the movie ticket should have cost $1.91 if inflation is the only factor that has caused the movie ticket price to go up. So when you look back at 2011, today we are in 2019. So how much does a movie ticket cost these days? So ballpark about, $15. Let's look back at the 2011. Was it much lower than $15? Probably not that much lower. Okay, it was probably about $10. Okay, $10 in 2011 for a movie ticket. So it is still much higher than $1.91. So when we go back to this question here, how could you tell if movies have increased in price faster or slower than most goods and services? What would be your answer? It is faster, right? Okay? Because if the movie ticket price rose according to the general prices of most goods and services in the economy, then it should have cost only $1.92, but 91 cents. But what we got when the movie ticket price in 2011 was actually much higher than that. That means there are other factors that cause the movie ticket price to rise that faster than the inflation. It could be, filmmakers being overpaid. It could be that people nowadays are more likely to pay premium for the entertainment. And you can also argue that the quality of the movie is much better these days than, in 1950. We have so many, special effects and it costs more to make and so on and so forth.